Well, good evening. I am Robert Sumwalt, and I'm the chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board. The investigator in charge for this accident is Bill English, who is standing right here. NTSB investigators arrived in Philadelphia around 4:30 this afternoon to begin our investigation of the engine failure and fatality of an onboard passenger on Southwest Flight 1380. We deal with a lot of things like this, and it's never easy. I certainly want to offer our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of the lady whose life was lost today. And also, we recognize that the passengers and crew on board that airplane have gone through a lot as well, and we'd like to offer our thoughts and prayers to all of those. I think most of you know the NTSB. We're an independent federal agency charged by Congress to investigate transportation accidents, to determine the probable cause, and to issue safety recommendations to prevent the reoccurrence of these sorts of things. We've brought a team with specialty in power plants, airworthiness, to look at the airworthiness of the aircraft itself. Power plants, of course, will be looking at the engine. We have specialists in survival factors, operations, and in Washington we have our recorders experts, as well as folks that will be looking at the maintenance records of this particular airplane. We came in, I mentioned, around 4:30. We put the recorders on the same airplane that we came in on, shipped them back to Washington. A preliminary audition of the cockpit voice recorder was done this evening, and just a few minutes ago we got the download from them. And here's the factual information that we have at this time. Southwest Flight 1380, a Boeing 737-700, departed LaGuardia at 10:43 a.m., destined for Dallas Love Field. The flight up to the point of the engine failure was routine. Approximately 20 minutes after takeoff, as the aircraft was passing through approximately 32,500 feet, multiple aural alerts and warnings sounded in the cockpit. The crew donned their oxygen mask, and they reported to air traffic control that they had a number one engine fire, and they were operating single engine, and they were initiating an emergency descent. They requested vectors to the nearest suitable airport and were promptly cleared direct to the Philadelphia International Airport. The crew declared an emergency and requested that emergency vehicles be standing by. They requested an extended final approach, longer than usual, and because they were concerned with potential aircraft controllability issues, they elected to land the airplane with flaps 5 instead of the normal flap setting for a Boeing 737, which would either be flaps 30 or flaps 40. Once they were on final approach, they clarified to the tower that there was no engine fire, but they were operating single engine, and they reported parts of the engine were missing. They delegated their duties and ran the necessary checklist. There were 144 passengers and 5 crew aboard the aircraft. Now, at about the same location as the event unfolded, later, someone found a Southwest Airlines engine cowling at Burnville, Pennsylvania, which is about 70 miles northwest of here. When we got to Philadelphia, of course, we wanted to proceed immediately to the aircraft, and our specialist immediately focused on a missing fan blade. So, of course, as you look in the in the engine from the front of the airplane, there are 24 fan blades that, of course, normally rotate, and they help bring air into the engine. One of the fan blades, the number 13 fan blade, was separated and missing, and it was separated at the point where it would come into the hub. So there's a hub, and then the fan blades attach to the hub. So this fan blade was broken right at the hub, and our preliminary examination of this was that there's evidence of metal fatigue where the blade separated. We located that immediately and sent photos to our materials lab in Washington, and so that's what the preliminary exam has found. There's much more to be done on this. Tomorrow morning at 7:30, the NTSB will hold our organizational meeting whereby we establish investigative protocols and designate parties to the investigation. Even though we did an initial audition of the cockpit voice recorder this evening in the recorder's lab in Washington, coming up, we will convene a formal cockpit voice recorder group to create a transcript of the CVR. Throughout the next several days, our investigators will be on scene to document factual information. Our mission is certainly to understand not only what happened, but why it happened, so that we can prevent things like this from happening in the future. While we are here, we will not determine the cause. The investigation is very extensive. We're just literally at the very, very beginning of the investigation. I would imagine that an investigation like this, to do it right, and we will do it right, would take between about 12 and 15 months. Since we're just literally on day one, just at the very beginning, we don't have a great deal of factual information to report at this time. However, we will keep you informed the best we can. And for the latest information on the next media briefing or other information that we discover, you may follow us at Twitter. Our handle is at NTSB_newsroom, or you can follow us at www.ntsb.gov. There's been a lot reported in the media already about this event. Some of it is factual and some of it is not. We do know that there's onboard pictures and video, and so we would request that passengers or crew that were on board the airplane, we would like to see your video. We would like to see your photographs of what was going on inside the airplane after this event unfolded. And you may submit that to an email address, which is witness@ntsb.gov. So again, we are requesting that people that have pictures or video from onboard the airplane, we would like to see that. Email address is witness@ntsb.gov. Before I wrap it up, I'd like to thank the Philadelphia International Airport, their police department, their airport rescue and firefighting facility, their operations folks. The airport CEO is here, greeted us when we walked in the terminal. We've gotten excellent support from them. In just a moment, I'll take questions. When I do, I'd like for you to raise your hand. When I call on you, please state your name and your outlet. So we'll start right here.
Chris Van Cleve, CBS News. There is a pending airworthiness directive on the 737 with this general engine type, looking at 15,000 cycles. It grew out of the last Southwest Airlines engine issue. Does there need to be more scrutiny on these engines as these planes get older?
Well, Chris has asked, there's an airworthiness directive out for certain models of the CFM56 engine. Does there need to be greater scrutiny for these engines as the airplanes get older or have more time on them? And what we want to do is see If anything in that airworthiness directive that came out from an event 2 years ago involving another Southwest Airplanes that landed in Pensacola, we want to see if this part might have been subjected to that airworthiness directive. I will say that in the last hour, I've spoken to Southwest Airlines CEO Gary Kelly, and he has told me that Southwest will immediately begin enhanced inspections procedures involving ultrasonic inspection. They will begin that and plan to have that on their entire fleet conducted very soon.
Ron, if I can ask a quick follow-up.
All right, follow-up.
You're a former 737 pilot yourself. How unusual is what you saw today in this airplane?
Well, the question is, yes, I flew a 737 for 10 years. How unusual is it to have what we saw today? And it's very unusual. And so we are taking this event extremely seriously. This should not happen, and we want to find out why it happened so that we can make sure that the preventive measures are put in place. I think I'd call it, yes.
While we're on NBC4 New York, can you describe how big of a fire, this engine fire this was, how long it took to come out, if it was still on fire when the plane landed on the ground?
So the question is regarding an engine fire. Earlier when we did a press briefing before we left Washington, I told a reporter in response to a question that there was no engine fire. However, we do know that the crew did report initially an engine fire. There's no indication by looking at the outside of the engine that there was a fire. However, there are fire wires that when they are, it is possible and even likely that once this fan blade separated, it activated an engine fire warning in the cockpit. But whether or not there was an actual fire with the engine, I do not believe there was an actual fire, but they could have gotten a fire warning. But again, later, as they were on final approach, they indicated there was no fire.
So as they arrived on the ground, was there any smoke whatsoever?
I have no indication that there was. I have no indication there was any fire when they landed the airplane. There's a question right here.
Can you tell us who the pilot was and her actions in getting that plane safely on the ground?
Well, I do not have the who was the pilot, what was the pilot's name. There were two pilots, of course. One was a male, the other was a female. The captain was a female, and I listened to not the cockpit voice recorder because that was auditioned in Washington, but I did listen to the air traffic control communications because we have been given that from the ATC, and it certainly sounded to me like they did an excellent job. The folks who did hear the CVR said they did a nice job, did their checklist and procedures. So my hat's off to them. As a fellow airline pilot, my hat's certainly off to them. We'll take a question back here, sir.
Mr. Sumwalt, Tom Costello with NBC News. Can you talk about how insidious metal fatigue can be? There's already evidence, you said, of metal fatigue at the source of this break. And we've seen metal fatigue in so many accidents over the years, all the way back to the United 235. Can you talk about what your concern may be that this could be a bigger problem than just this one instance?
Well, Tom wants to know how insidious or how much of a problem is metal fatigue in engines, and it is very much of a problem. And so there are supposed to be inspections, mostly non-destructive testing, to look for any potential cracks that may be there as a result of metal fatigue or other reasons. But we are very concerned about it. Just a few months ago, we finished up an investigation of another airliner, completely different type of engine that had a metal fatigue going all the way back to the manufacturer of the disc. So we are very concerned about it. There needs to be proper inspection mechanisms in place to check for this before there's a catastrophic event. There's a question right here. Yes, ma'am.
AJ Ross, WABC New York. You mentioned flaps 5 being selected by the pilot during landing. Can you explain that further and the degree of difficulty this was in landing this plane?
Yeah, so the question regards landing at flaps 5. As I mentioned, the normal flap setting for landing on a 737 is either flaps 30 or 40. They landed with flaps 5. That would mean that they were going to have a faster approach speed by a good bit. And and they did that because of concerns about controllability. So it's a question right here.
Chairman, would you say, based on what you know right now, that it is utterly amazing how this pilot was able to bring this plane safely down.
Well, thank you. The question is, how would I describe the pilot's performance? I think I've already done that. They are trained. I know this because I lived this for 24 years. Every 6 months, every 9 months, whatever the interval is for Southwest, they're in the simulator and they practice emergency descents. Routinely, pilots practice losing an engine. That's something that practiced every time we go to the simulator. And it appears to me that they did the job as professional airline pilots are trained and expected to do. So again, my hat's off to them. It's a question right here.
Hi, Mr. Sumwalt. David Spott with CBS here in Philadelphia. You talked about Burnville, Pennsylvania. I believe it's in Berks County. What exactly was found there? I just want to make sure I understand a potential piece of the plane.
Yeah. So what was found up in Bucks County and Burnville, Berks County, the cowling. So as you've seen from the pictures, the outside of the engine, the cowling that surrounds the engine was missing, and a piece of that was found in this location about 60 miles northwest of here. Okay, one more question.
Can you tell us the last time that engine was inspected?
When was the last time that engine was inspected? I do not know that. That's why we formed a maintenance records group that will go to Dallas, to Southwest's facilities to go over all of the maintenance inspections. I want to thank you all for covering this story. We'll keep you posted as best as we can. Thank you very much.
You said the captain was female, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.